The jungle world of Arena was unlike any place humans had stepped on before. Its skies were heavy with clouds that glowed faint green at night. Its air carried a thick scent of flowers that looked beautiful but hid poisons in their petals. The ground itself shifted with life, roots crawling as though the soil breathed. Explorers from Earth had mapped only the edges of this strange planet. Most crews stayed close to their ships. The deeper lands were feared because of a name whispered between traders and hunters. A name that belonged to a being who made Arena a graveyard. That name was Rin. Rin was not a myth. She was tall, scaled like a serpent, but shaped with a human form. Her eyes glowed yellow in the dark. Her fangs were the reason many avoided Arena. Her bite carried venom that ended every life it touched. The poison burned through blood, shutting hearts in moments. Many alien raiders who thought they could take her fell silent in the jungle, their ships left rusting in vines. Her legend grew until no one dared to challenge her. To the galaxy, Rin was a monster of nature, a queen of death. Dan was not a hero or a soldier. He was a scout, one of many humans sent to explore resource worlds. He was not looking for danger. He was only supposed to survey land for minerals and safe zones. His crew stayed near the shuttle, marking soil and taking samples. Don walked further, carrying a scanner and a pack. He liked to see more than the machines did. His steps were slow, his eyes careful. But the jungle of Arena did not forgive mistakes. The first mistake came when the sky darkened faster than he expected. The jungle became a wall of shadows. His second mistake was ignoring the warning sound of clicking echoes from unseen creatures. His third was losing the signal of his crew when the vines closed around him. Dan tried to return, but every path twisted. Roots shifted, trees bent. Before he knew it, he was deeper than any human had gone. When he saw her, he did not know it was her. He only knew fear. Rin stepped from the shadows without sound. Her body moved with a slow grace, and her eyes locked on him like a predator who had hunted his kind many times. Her lips curled, showing fangs that gleamed. Don raised his scanner like it could shield him, but he knew it was useless. He had heard the stories of her. No armor, no field, no weapon could save against her bite. She came closer. Don froze. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. The air itself seemed to trap him. Rin tilted her head, studying him. To her, he was only another intruder. She had ended countless lives the same way. Her clawed hand reached out, catching his arm. Her strength was far beyond his. She pulled him close, and before he could resist, her fangs sank into his skin. Dan gasped, expecting darkness. He waited for his heart to stop, for his body to collapse. The venom rushed into his veins like fire. His vision blurred, but instead of death, something else happened. His chest pounded harder, not weaker. His arms shook with a strange power. Heat spread through him, and instead of falling, he remained standing. His breath came heavy, but he was alive. His eyes met hers, wide with shock. Rin pulled back in confusion. She had never seen such a thing. Every species she had bitten had died in moments. Yet this human still stood before her. His face showed pain, but also life. She could hear his heart racing strong. She narrowed her eyes, circling him like she expected him to fall any second. But he did not. He straightened his back, clutching his arm where her bite marks glowed faint red. "Why am I not dead?" Don whispered, his voice shaking. He could barely believe his own words. Rin did not answer. She hissed softly, her mind racing. She moved forward again, testing him. Her hand pressed against his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heart. It was faster than normal, yet not breaking. She brought her fangs close once more, this time with curiosity rather than hunger. Dawn tried to pull away, but her grip was like steel. She bit again, lighter this time, just enough for venom to enter. Dan groaned, gripping the tree beside him for balance, but once again he stayed upright. His vision flashed bright, then cleared. His breath came deep, his strength grew steadier. The venom was not killing him. It was changing him. Rin stepped back, staring at him. For the first time in her life, she was uncertain. This human was not prey. He was something else. She could feel it in the way the jungle itself grew quiet around them. Even the creatures hiding in the shadows seemed to wait. Dan stood there, trembling but alive, his body adapting with every second. He looked at her with a mix of fear and wonder. "What did you do to me?" he asked. Rin spoke at last, her voice smooth and low, carrying an edge of surprise. "You should be dead." Don almost laughed, though it came out as a weak breath. "I thought so too." The silence between them stretched. She circled him again, watching every movement. He noticed her eyes were no longer only cold. They carried curiosity. She had lived so long with the power to end life, and now she faced the first who resisted it. For her, this was not only strange, was impossible. She did not kill him then. Instead, she pulled him deeper into the jungle. Dawn struggled, but her hold was too strong. He was dragged to a cavern hidden beneath roots and glowing crystals. The place looked ancient, filled with markings that spoke of her kind. She pushed him inside, keeping him close as if he were a secret she could not share with the outside world. Dan sat against the wall, breathing hard, his body still burning from the venom. He thought he might collapse, but the strength inside him refused to let him rest. His blood felt alive. He stared at his arm where the bite marks pulsed faintly like a second heartbeat. Fear battled with curiosity in his mind. He had gone from lost scout to captive in the lair of a legend. Yet he was not dead, and that alone was a mystery that gave him hope. Rin stood in the shadows of the cavern, her eyes never leaving him. She spoke again, her voice almost softer. "You are not like the others." Dawn met her gaze, still trembling, but firm enough to answer. "Maybe that is because I am human." The word human seemed to echo in the cavern. Rin tilted her head, as though tasting the sound. She had heard of humans, a young race from a distant world, often underestimated by older species. But she had never met one until now. And now, this one stood alive after her venom. It was a truth that shook everything she believed about her own nature. As night settled outside, the cavern glowed with faint light from the crystals. Don leaned against the wall, trying to understand what had happened to him. His heart still pounded with unnatural strength, his senses sharper than before. Every sound in the jungle seemed clear, every breath of wind on his skin more alive. He could feel the change, and he knew it was not temporary. Something within him had awakened. Rin remained silent, her gaze steady, as if she were watching the birth of something she did not yet understand. For the first time in her long life, she was not the only power in her world. A human had survived her bite, and in that moment both of them knew their paths would no longer follow the old stories. Something new had begun in the jungle of Orina, something that would shake the galaxy. The cavern was silent, except for the faint drip of water from above. The crystals glowed in soft green and blue light, casting long shadows across the walls. Dan sat against the stone, his breath slowing but his body still restless. He could not explain the fire inside him. It was not pain anymore. It was energy. A pulse that made his muscles twitch with strength he did not remember having. His senses were sharp. He could hear the crawling of insects far up the wall. He could smell the rich dampness of the soil. His skin tingled, as if the very air was alive. Rin stood at a distance, her golden eyes steady on him. She had dragged him here out of instinct, not reason. She wanted to see if he would die after all. But hours had passed, and he did not. His body only grew more alive. She crossed her arms, her scaled skin catching the crystal light, and studied him like a puzzle. She had lived long, seen much, but nothing like this human. He was a contradiction to her nature. Her venom was death to all, yet he sat breathing, heart racing, refusing to fall. Dan finally broke the silence. "You are watching me like I am some experiment." "You are," she replied without hesitation. Her voice was low and smooth, but there was an edge in it. Dan forced a small smile. "Glad to know I am interesting." "Should not be," she said sharply. She stepped closer, her movements smooth like a serpent. "Every creature I have bitten has died. They do not scream long. They fall, their eyes grow empty, their blood stops. But you, human, you take my poison as if it were food. Why?" Dan shook his head. I don't know. I felt it burn through me. I thought I was dying, but then it changed. It feels like fire, but also like life. I cannot explain it. Rin leaned down, her face close to his. Her breath was cool, her gaze intense. I will test again. Before he could answer, she caught his wrist and pressed her fangs lightly against his skin. A sharp sting came, and the venom entered him once more. Dan winced, his hand clenching against the stone floor. His vision blurred, but instead of falling, his body steadied faster than before. His heart raced, his muscles tightened, and a strange heat ran up his arm. He pulled his hand free, breathing hard, but he remained strong. Rin stepped back, her eyes narrowing. She whispered more to herself than to him. Impossible. Dan laughed softly, though his chest was still rising and falling fast. That word seems to come up a lot when humans are around. Her eyes flickered. She had heard of humans before, stories of a race from a distant world. A species not known for strength or weapons, but for stubbornness. Traders spoke of them as daring, sometimes reckless. She had never cared. But now, this one human sat alive in her cavern after 3 doses of her venom. That was no small thing, she asked slowly. Does your kind all resist venom? No, Dan said quickly, shaking his head. Not like this. Back home, venom can kill us. Snake bite, spider bite. It ends lives. We don't have resistance like this. I don't know why I am still breathing. Rin moved to the far wall, resting her hand on the ancient carvings etched into the stone. They showed her kind, tall figures with serpent fangs, standing over fallen prey. The stories painted them as eternal predators. She had believed them her whole life. But now, the carvings seemed less certain. She looked back at Dan. Perhaps your blood is different. Or perhaps the stories of my kind are not as complete as I thought. Dawn studied her. Despite her sharp fangs and scaled skin, there was something more than a monster in her eyes. She was thinking, questioning herself. He almost forgot that only hours ago she had nearly killed him. Why keep me alive? He asked. You could have ended me with your claws. Yet here I am. Rin was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, because you do not die, and that makes you valuable. Dan frowned. Valuable how? She did not answer directly. Instead, she stepped toward the entrance of the cavern and listened. Outside, the jungle moved with distant sounds, wings, growls, and the clicking of creatures hidden in shadows. Her keen senses picked up something else too. Ships had landed not far from this place. She could feel the vibration in the ground. Others had come. They always came. Greedy hunters, scavengers, raiders. They came to take from Marina. They came to test her, and they always failed. Dawn noticed the change in her stance. What is it? Visitors, she said simply. Dan's eyes widened. My crew? She glanced back at him. Not your crew. Others, they bring weapons. They come for me. Or maybe for you now. Dawn tried to stand, still shaky, but he managed. Why me? Because if word spreads that a human can live through my venom, they will want you. They will think your blood carries an answer. They will hunt you. The thought chilled Dan. He had not asked for this. He only wanted to explore, to map ground and return. Now he was something dangerous in the eyes of the galaxy. His breath caught. So what happens now? Rin looked at him, her expression unreadable. Now you stay with me. If they come, they will face both of us. Dan almost laughed at the absurdity. Both of us. I am just a scout. You are the one with the deadly bite. Her eyes sharpened. And you are the one who survives it. Do not think that is small. The hours passed, and the sounds of the jungle grew louder. Rin stepped outside the cavern, blending into the shadows. Dan followed at a distance, though his steps were clumsy compared to her silent grace. The jungle stretched wide, glowing faintly under the twin moons above. He could see lights flickering in the distance, fires, maybe camps. He knew she was right. Others were here, and they were not friendly. Rin led him to a cliff that overlooked the valley. Below, a group of alien mercenaries had set up camp. Their ships were painted with red marks, and their weapons shone under the firelight. Don counted at least 20 of them. He recognized the kind. They were not explorers. They were hunters who had come for trophies, riches, or both. Rin's voice was low as she watched them. They seek me. They always do. But if they learn of you, human, they will take you first. Dan swallowed hard. He felt the fire of Venom still alive in his blood. It gave him strength, but could it help against armed soldiers? He was not sure. Still, he knew running was useless. The jungle twisted paths and trapped travelers. Without her, he would be lost again in minutes. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Stay close," she answered. Her eyes glowed brighter under the moonlight. "Learn what you are becoming. Each dose of venom makes you stronger. Perhaps strong enough to survive this world beside me." Don looked at his hands. His skin was normal, but under it, he felt the energy pulsing. He clenched his fists, testing his strength. It felt different, sharper, as though his body had been remade, piece by piece. He did not know if it was enough. But in that moment, he understood something. He was not only surviving her venom, he was changing because of it. They returned to the cavern before dawn. Don tried to rest, but his mind kept racing. He thought of his crew, of whether they were still alive near the shuttle. He thought of the mercenaries waiting below. Most of all, he thought of Rin. She was deadly, a legend of death, yet she had not ended him. Instead, she kept him close, as if she needed him as much as he needed her. As he drifted into uneasy sleep, he realized his life had shifted forever. He was no longer just a scout. He was the first human to survive her bite, and now he was caught in something far larger than he had ever imagined. Rin watched him sleep, her eyes glowing in the dark. She did not know why she kept him alive, but deep inside, she felt a pull she could not explain. For the first time, she was not alone in her world of poison. And for the first time, she wondered if her venom had not found prey, but a partner. The sun rose over the jungle of Arena, painting the sky in streaks of orange and green. Mist hovered over the trees as Rin led Dan through narrow paths between massive roots. His body moved with surprising ease, though he knew his strength was still new and untested. The venom had changed him, giving him endurance and speed that no ordinary human possessed. Yet each step also reminded him of the danger he faced. The jungle was alive, breathing, and watching. And the hunters from the night before were still somewhere near. Dan tried to speak, but words caught in his throat. The experience with Rin had left him cautious. He wanted to understand more about her, about the venom, about why he survived. Rin noticed his hesitation and slowed her pace. Her scaled hand brushed over the leaves as she walked, moving with a silent grace. "You have changed," she said, without looking at him. "The venom does more than keep you alive. It awakens things hidden in your blood, things that other species do not have." Don touched his chest, feeling the unfamiliar pulse. "I feel it. I can sense the jungle. Everything. Is it supposed to do that?" Rin finally glanced at him. Her yellow eyes studied his face carefully. "It is rare. Even among humans, most cannot survive a single bite. You carry something different, something strong, perhaps enough to stand beside me." Dan swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can. I was just a scout. You're more than that now," she said, her voice low but firm. "You are part of this world in a way you cannot yet understand." As they walked, the sounds of the jungle grew louder. Birds with strange colors sang in the trees. Insects scuttled over roots and rocks, their shells glittering in the sunlight. Yet beneath this beauty, danger remained. Dan could feel it, the vibration of creatures moving silently, of predators stalking from the shadows. His new senses made him aware of everything. He could detect movement before it came into view. He could smell the scent of animals from far away. He could hear whispers of water flowing through underground streams. Rin led him to a clearing where a stream flowed through rocks covered in moss. The water was crystal clear, and sunlight sparkled on its surface. Don knelt and drank, the coolness refreshing him. He felt a new clarity, as if the venom had sharpened not only his body, but his mind. Rin watched him, her arms crossed. You must learn to control it. The strength you have now is dangerous. If you lose control, it can consume you. The venom does not only change the body, it changes the mind, the instincts. Dawn nodded slowly. I understand. I will try. Hours passed, and the two remained in the clearing. Dan practiced moving silently, testing his speed and strength. He climbed trees, leaped over rocks, and ran along the stream. Each movement was easier than before, each test showing him what he could now do. Rin observed, occasionally offering guidance. You must trust yourself, she said. Fear will make you weak. The venom is a tool, not a master. You control it, or it controls you. Don listened carefully. He felt a bond forming between them, one built on survival and understanding. He had come to Arena alone, lost and vulnerable, and now he was learning from a being who could have ended his life. Yet instead, she taught him. As evening fell, the sky turned shades of purple and gold. The jungle seemed to change as well. Shadows grew longer, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures began to stir. Rin led Don to a hidden cave nearby. We must rest. Night brings dangers that even the venom cannot fully protect against. Inside the cave, Dan settled on a bed of soft moss. He felt exhaustion creeping into his muscles, though his strength still lingered beneath the surface. Rin moved to the entrance, her eyes scanning the forest. They will come, she said quietly. The hunters, the ones who know of your survival, they will try to take you from me. From this world? Dan frowned. Then we fight. Yes, Rin said simply. We do not flee. We do not hide. You will learn what it means to stand beside me, to survive together. Dan lay back, watching her silhouette against the light of the jungle. He realized how different his life had become. Hours ago, he had been a simple scout, worried only about mapping land and reporting back. Now, he was part of a bond he did not fully understand. He had survived death itself, and in doing so, had found a companion unlike any other. Night fell fully, and the sounds of Arena's predators grew louder. Yet Dan did not fear. He had strength now. He had senses that warned him of danger. He had Rin, whose presence alone commanded respect from the creatures of the jungle. And as he drifted into sleep, he knew that tomorrow would bring challenges unlike any he had faced. Challenges that would test the limits of his new powers and the trust. Between him and the being who had once been his predator, morning came, and with it, the distant rumble of vengeance. The hunters had arrived. Dan and Rin moved silently through the trees, preparing for the confrontation. Dan felt the venom thrumming in his veins, sharpening his reflexes. His heart beat steady, strong, ready. Rin glanced at him. Remember what I taught you. Trust yourself. Trust the venom. Trust me. Don nodded. He felt no fear now, only readiness. The hunters were many, their weapons powerful, but he and Rin had the jungle, the venom, and each other. When the first of the enemy soldiers appeared, Don reacted instantly. He moved faster than any human should, dodging blasts and slipping through shadows. Rin struck from above, her fangs and claws precise and deadly. Together, they became a force neither the hunters nor the jungle had seen before. Dan marveled at his own abilities. He leaped, dodged, and struck with precision. Each movement was fueled by the venom. His body stronger, faster, more aware than ever. The hunters regrouped, bringing more firepower. Dan and Rin fought side by side, blending instinct, strength, and strategy. The jungle itself seemed to move with them, roots and vines aiding their attacks, blocking paths, hiding them from sight. Each strike was calculated, each defense precise. Hours passed, and the hunters fell back. Many were injured, some unconscious, and a few fled into the deeper jungle. Dan stood panting, his body alive with energy. He looked at Rin, who stood beside him, her eyes glowing yellow. You did well, she said quietly. So did you, Dan replied. Smiling despite his exhaustion, the victory was temporary. But it had shown Dan the truth of what he had become. He was not just surviving the venom, he was thriving because of it, and he was no longer alone. Rin had accepted him as a partner, someone who could stand beside her against any challenge. As the sun set once more over Arena, Dan understood the path ahead would be dangerous. Many would come to test him. Many would seek to exploit the secret of his survival. But for the first time, he felt a confidence he had never known. He had faced death, survived the impossible, and found strength within himself. And at his side, the most deadly creature of the jungle waited, not as an enemy, but as an ally. Together, they would face whatever came next. And Dan knew he would no longer fear what the galaxy could throw at him.
The jungle of Arena was alive with movement, though the morning sun made the shadows soft and deceptive. Dan followed Rin through thick undergrowth, learning to trust the instincts that her venom had awakened within him. Every sound, every shift of the leaves, every scent carried meaning. He could feel the presence of creatures before they even appeared. His body was no longer the weak form he had brought to Arena. It had become sharp, precise, and full of energy that surged at the slightest provocation. Rin moved ahead, her steps silent but deliberate. Her eyes constantly scanned the area, alert to every ripple in the jungle. She had fought for centuries and had seen countless intruders fall, yet she still treated this mission with care. She glanced back at Dan and nodded, acknowledging his growth. He was learning quickly, faster than she had expected. The venom had not only kept him alive, it had awakened something hidden in his blood, something that allowed him to endure challenges that would destroy ordinary humans. Dan kept pace, his muscles flexing with each step, his senses heightened. He could hear the faint crack of branches far above, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, even the distant hum of insects that moved in formations across the canopy. Every step through the jungle was a lesson, every sound a warning. He was learning to see the world in a way that no human before him had. As they approached a clearing, Rin paused. Below in the valley, a group of alien hunters was setting up their camp. They had heard rumors of a human surviving Rin's venom and had come to see for themselves. The human's resilience was a mystery, and they believed it might carry secrets worth exploiting. Rin's jaw tightened. She had no intention of letting them succeed. She turned to Dan. "You will need to fight," she said. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that made Dan understand the seriousness of their situation. Dan nodded. He could feel the venom coursing through his veins, making him faster, stronger, sharper. "I will," he replied, his voice steady. He had no experience with real combat, yet he now had the instincts and strength to match Rin in a way he never could have imagined. The hunters' camp was chaotic, full of movement and noise. They had brought weapons designed to pierce armor and energy fields, yet they had underestimated the terrain and the jungle itself. Rin led Dan to a vantage point above the clearing. He could see their movements, the direction of their patrols, and the rhythm of their guards. Rin whispered instructions, teaching him how to strike and move with precision. "Do not act without thought. Use your senses. Trust your strength. Above all, trust me." Dan absorbed every word. His mind was clear, focused, and alert. He felt the rhythm of the jungle in his bones, the power of the venom in his muscles, and a growing bond with Rin that made them feel like a single force rather than two separate beings. When the first of the hunters moved too close to the trees where they hid, Dan struck. He leapt down silently, dodging a beam of light from a weapon, and knocking a hunter unconscious with a precise strike. The venom had heightened his reflexes, his timing perfect. Rin followed, moving like a shadow, her fangs and claws deadly in their strikes. Together they became an unstoppable team, striking from angles the hunters could not predict. Hours passed as the battle continued. The hunters regrouped, but every attack they made was met with resistance. Dan's body responded instinctively, his muscles moving in perfect coordination with Rin's. He was faster than any human had the right to be, yet every movement felt natural. He began to understand the depth of the venom's power. It did not only strengthen him physically, but it also enhanced his mind and instincts, allowing him to anticipate danger and respond without hesitation. As the last of the hunters fled into the deeper jungle, Dan and Rin stood together in the clearing. Their chests heaved, but their eyes were sharp. They had survived, and more than that, they had thrived. Dan looked at Rin, realizing that their bond had grown stronger through the fight. They were no longer simply predator and prey. They were allies. partners in a world where survival demanded unity. "You have done well," Rin said softly, her gaze steady on him. "So have you," Dan replied, his voice carrying a new confidence. He could feel the Venom's power still humming through his body, a reminder that he was different now. Rin studied him for a long moment. "You are changing," she said. "The Venom is teaching you, shaping you. You are becoming more than human, but you must learn to control it. It is a tool, and like any tool, it can be dangerous if misused." Dan nodded. He had felt the change, his strength, his reflexes, his senses. But her words made him realize that power without control could become a threat to others as well as himself. "I will learn," he said firmly. "I will not let it control me." The rest of the day was spent moving deeper into the jungle. They avoided paths where other hunters might follow, relying on Dan's new instincts and Rin's experience to guide them. The jungle tested them constantly. Predators lurked. Natural traps waited in the undergrowth, and the terrain shifted with sudden drops and hidden vines. Each challenge became a test for Dan, forcing him to apply the lessons Rin had taught him. By nightfall, they reached a hidden valley surrounded by cliffs and thick foliage. The area was untouched by hunters, a perfect place to rest and plan their next steps. Dan collapsed onto soft moss, exhausted but exhilarated. He had survived the hunters, adapted to the jungle, and learned to wield the Venom's power without fear. Rin sat beside him, her presence calm and commanding. "You have done well today," she said, "but tomorrow will bring new challenges. The galaxy will hear of a human who survives my venom, and others will come. You must continue to grow stronger, faster, and wiser. The world beyond this jungle is not forgiving." Dan lay back, gazing at the stars through the canopy above. He felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He had started as a simple scout, unprepared for the dangers of Arena, and now he had become a warrior, a partner to one of the most feared beings in the galaxy. "I am ready," he said quietly, more to himself than to Rin. She nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Good, because the trials have only begun, and you are no longer alone." The jungle settled into silence, broken only by the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Dan felt the venom thrumming in his veins, a reminder of the strength he had gained, the bond he had formed, and the challenges that lay ahead. Together, he and Rin would face whatever came, survive whatever threatened them, and adapt to whatever the galaxy sent their way. The first human to survive Rin's deadly bite had not only endured, but had begun to transform into something stronger, something capable of standing beside a legend. And in that hidden valley, with the jungle alive around them and danger still waiting beyond, Dan understood that his journey had truly begun. He was no longer just a human. He was a force in the making, shaped by venom, guided by experience, and bonded to a being who had once been his predator but now was his ally, his teacher, and his protector.
The jungle of Arena was calm as the first light of dawn filtered through the thick canopy. Dan stood beside Rin on the cliff edge, looking down at the valley below. The alien hunters who had once challenged them were gone, but the threat of others remained. Dan's body pulsed with energy, every muscle ready, every sense alert. The venom still flowed through his veins, keeping him alive, keeping him strong, and sharpening his mind. He felt a deep connection to the jungle, to Rin, and to himself in a way he had never felt before. Rin's gaze swept the valley, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "The galaxy will come for you," she said, her voice steady. "For centuries, I have ended lives with my venom. Few have survived, and now one has. You are no longer a secret." Don nodded. "Then we face them together," he said, his confidence firm. He no longer feared the hunters, the predators, or the unknown. He had survived the impossible. He had become something stronger than he ever imagined. They moved through the trees, silent and coordinated. Rin led and Dan followed, instinct guiding him. Every sound of the jungle, every rustle of leaves, every movement of animals gave them information. The hunters were skilled, but they were predictable compared to the combined instincts of a human reshaped by venom. And an alien predator perfected by centuries of survival. As they approached a clearing, they saw the first signs of new intruder ships landing carefully. Their engines quiet but detectable to Dan's heightened senses. He whispered to Rin, "They are here." Rin nodded. "Then we test your strength. Today, you prove what you are. The first wave of hunters emerged, armed and confident. They had studied the stories of Rin, but none had anticipated the human who survived her venom. Dan moved instinctively, his body reacting before his mind fully registered the danger. He leaped, dodged, and struck, using his newfound power with precision. Rin was beside him, her claws and fangs striking with lethal accuracy. Together, they became a single force, fluid and unstoppable. The hunters tried to regroup, but the jungle itself seemed to aid them. Roots and vines moved under the guidance of Rin's understanding of the land, creating obstacles and traps. Dan's reflexes allowed him to anticipate attacks, dodge projectiles, respond with force that stunned even the most skilled mercenaries. Hours passed in a blur of motion and strategy. Dan and Rin worked as one, covering each other, communicating silently through glances and subtle gestures. They had become a team that no ordinary enemy could confront. The hunters began to fall back, realizing that their strength and numbers were useless against the combined power of the human and the predator. Finally, silence returned to the clearing. Dan stood beside Rin, breathing heavily but unbroken. His muscles throbbed with the energy of the venom, his mind alert and clear. He looked at Rin, and for the first time he understood the bond they shared. They were no longer predator and prey, teacher and student. They were partners, capable of facing any threat the galaxy might send. Rin's eyes softened as she looked at him. You have done more than survive. You have adapted. You have grown stronger than I expected. You are no longer just human. You are part of this world, and part of me in a way few will ever understand. Dan felt a sense of pride, not in victory, but in understanding. He had been changed by the venom, by the jungle, and by Rin. He was no longer the scout who had wandered too far from his crew. He was something new, capable, alive, powerful. They moved deeper into the jungle, avoiding the paths where others might follow. The land was alive with creatures, but none dared approach. The jungle recognized their presence as something formidable, something not to be challenged. Dan felt a strange harmony with the world around him. The venom allowing him to sense not only threats but balance, patterns, and life itself. As night fell, they reached a hidden valley, surrounded by cliffs and dense foliage. The stars glimmered above, and the soft sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air. Dan lay on soft moss, his body tired but his spirit alert. He had survived challenges no human should have, fought against enemies stronger and more numerous than he could have imagined, and adapted to a world that had once been hostile and incomprehensible. Rin sat nearby, her eyes scanning the horizon. The galaxy will not forget you, she said, and they will not forget me. Together, we will face those who come.
Ow.
Dan nodded. Then we are ready. Whatever comes, we survive, we adapt, and we endure. The jungle settled into quiet, the bond between human and alien predator stronger than ever. Dan knew his life had changed forever. He had discovered a new strength, a new resilience, and a new connection that could not be broken. And with Rin by his side, he was ready to face any challenge, conquer any danger, and embrace the power that had transformed him into something more than he had ever imagined. The jungle of Arena stretched endlessly, alive with mystery, danger, and possibility. And in the heart of that wild, untamed world, a human and a predator walked together, unbroken, united, and unstoppable. Together, they had proven that life could endure even in the face of death, that strength could emerge from the impossible, and that the bond between beings of different worlds could change the course of destiny. Dan closed his eyes. Feeling the pulse of the jungle and the venom in his veins, he understood the truth now. Survival was only the beginning. Adaptation was the key. And with the partnership he had forged with Rin, he knew that nothing, not the hunters, not the galaxy, not even death itself could stop them. The world had tested him, and he had risen beyond it, stronger, wiser, and alive. As dawn broke over the hidden valley, the first light touched the leaves and the rocks, painting everything in gold. Dan stood, stretching his arms, feeling the life that flowed through him. Beside him, Rin mirrored his stance, alert and ready. Together, they stepped forward into the unknown, knowing that their journey was far from over, but confident that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side, as equals, as allies, and as something stronger than any legend the galaxy had ever known.